Hi writers, welcome to week 2. So this video is meant to just serve as an introduction to some of the work we'll do in week 2 and also introduce to you the Explication essay, paper number 1 for this class. I do recommend that you have a notebook handy just to jot down a few key ideas because you will apply these ideas to your brainstorming for paper number 1. This first paper is about you and your own personal experience, so you should not and do not need to Google your topic for ideas. The ideas for this paper and any personal paper should come entirely from your own experience and your own words. Additionally, in this course, as we've talked about a little bit before, and you will learn more about in the AI and academic integrity video, all coursework in this Composition 1 class must be completed by the student without using generative AI programs unless otherwise authorized, and that would be on a case-by-case basis for particular specific uses. All coursework includes all steps of assignment preparation: research, invention, coming up with ideas, brainstorming, drafting, outlining, and revising. So we are avoiding AI in this course because all of the learning objectives in this course require you to have these basic skills that you can complete on your own. So essay number 1 now, and here's where I do recommend that you take a few notes for sure, is an explication essay. And explicate essentially just means to explain in detail using illustration and examples. The goal is to make something clear or understandable, so the purpose of your essay will be to try to help your audience understand something they might be unfamiliar with. In this case, because it's an explication paper, you will be trying to help them understand something by using a lot of illustration, examples, and details. And in this case, this is an identity personal explication essay. So the thing that you are trying to explain is you, or more specifically, some aspect of your identity. So I've chosen this prompt for a few reasons. One of them is that it's a good idea to start a composition class with something students already are familiar with, ourselves. Additionally, I am a big proponent of story listening and active listening to each other's experiences, especially in a very polarized world. Like politically, we are living in a very politically polarized and polarizing world. And we often have the tendency to just dismiss each other without first attempting to understand one another. So in this case, you want to choose an aspect of your identity that you feel is often misunderstood or that you wish people knew more about, in an attempt to explain your experience to people who experience the world in a different way because they don't have that same identity. You will be choosing a very specific aspect of your identity. So not just everything about you, but focusing on a particular element of who you are of your experience. We'll talk about the prompt soon. And this is where you might want to jot down some notes as well. There are 3 key things we're looking for in an effective explication essay. Number 1, a focused thesis statement. So you're going to articulate some aspect of your experience and what is specifically you want people to understand about that experience. A clear sense of audience and purpose. You are explaining the aspect of your identity for a reason, because it tends to be misunderstood or because you want to impart wisdom on people who may go through similar things. So you will have a very clear sense of audience, whether that's teachers, parents, other college students, whomever. And then essential to an effective explication essay is this 3rd point here, compelling details and illustrations. So you will have main points, you will have these abstract ideas like, for example, being a teacher means I feel proud. That's very abstract. But then you will need to come in and provide examples of times you felt that, or examples of times you had that type of experience. The types of details you're offering are going to provide insight because they're about your personal experience and your own reflection. This is not an argument essay, so you are not sort of taking an argumentative stance about your identity. But we are still writing with purpose as to what you want people to take away from what you are saying. A reminder too, this is straight from the assignment sheet. Consider lots of different aspects of identity. So identity encompasses memories, experiences, relationships, values that create your sense of self. It creates a steady sense of self over time, but also our identity is also constantly in development. And that's a little bit of what we're exploring in Prompt B as well. So I want you to think about aspects of identity like social aspects, your roles, different roles that you hold, and personal aspects of identity, such as your values, your personality, aptitudes. So think ability, disability, race, gender, expression, as well as organizations, perhaps belonging to a particular faith or spirituality, or being a practitioner of a particular mindset. To help you brainstorm, it's a great idea to draw a circle like this, or to start listing. Just start listing things about you. Think about your race and ethnicity, your socioeconomic status, your gender, your sex, your gender expression, sexual orientation, national origin, your language, any ability or disability, your age, your generation, any spiritual or religious affiliation. And then from there, just continue listing things like role, social role, personal. What about personality? What about different cultural groups that you belong to? Make a very big, gigantic list. This is step one of your brainstorming, is just to start to list all these things. And then we're going to add some of these things to the paper number 1, process doc assignment. So keep these in mind. The next video lesson this week will walk you through how to fill in that process doc. But I also want you to start to consider things like intersectionality. We don't want to write sort of a paper that a lot of people are writing, okay? Or we don't want to choose an aspect of our identity that people already sort of get or understand because it's pretty common experience. So I want you to think about the aspects of your identity that have the greatest impact on how you're perceived or how you're understood or misunderstood. And then I also want you to think sort of cross-categorically. So for example, in my list, I could list mother, I could list teacher. So I could talk about what it's like to be a mother, but that's very broad in general. I could talk about what it's like to be a teacher, but again, that's very broad. There's lots of different types of teachers. But I could also think about combining those two and talking about what it's like to be a teacher who's also a mother. And then we're getting more specific and therefore more interesting and more unique, because that is sort of a subgroup of one of these large identities. So I'm going to challenge you to make a big list and then think about how combining some of these things can help you come up with a more unique and more individual approach to this paper.